Hello everyone and welcome to today's Cambridge University Press ELT webinar. I'm delighted to welcome as today's presenter Ben Goldstein back once again. Ben lives in Barcelona and works as an English teacher, teacher trainer and materials writer. He's taught for over 20 years in the UK, Spain, Hong Kong, and he's currently teaching materials writing on an online ESOL Masters at the New School of New York. He's the author with Paul Driver of the Cambridge Handbook Language Learning with Digital Video, and has recently been working on two new courses, Eyes Open and Uncover, exciting new secondary courses for Cambridge University Press. So, over to you, Ben.
Hello everybody, thank you Alistair for that very kind introduction. Just want to check that everyone can hear me okay. Just if you can hear me, just type yes in the chat box. Looks like people can hear me. That's good. I'm here in Barcelona, a beautiful sunny winter day. In fact, we don't seem to have had winter at all here. It seems to be the California of Europe. I don't know what it's like where you are, but I've kind of forgotten what sunny is. Forgotten what winter is. Sunny in Morocco, I see. Good. Well, very nice to see so many people. And it's even like spring in Lindsay in the UK, perhaps. Freezing, Annie says. Okay, well, maybe not. Anyway, I'm going to be speaking today about online video genres and student creation. If you've seen any of my webinars before, you'll know that I talk a lot about video and images. There's two of my main interests, as Alistair said in his introduction. And today I'm going to be talking about genres in relation to student creation of video, not just exploitation, but creation. If there's any doubt about what genres mean, I suppose we can talk about genres referring to video, we can talk about genres referring to text, images and so on. We're just talking here about types in the same way that an email is an example of a text genre, or a promotional text is another textual genre. An advert or a trailer or all of these examples are also examples of video genres or video types. And I'm going to try and show today why understanding genre, why unpacking and analysing genre can help us in relation with getting students to create videos. So let's get underway without further ado. Why we're going to be looking here, there's an overview here of what we're going to be looking at today. First of all, I think I've already said a little bit why that's important, but I'll go into more details. Then we're going to look at various different online video genres. Of course, if you've been teaching as long as I have, you'll be thinking about video genres in terms of things like situation comedy or thriller or something like that. Obviously, these days, with online platforms, video sharing platforms like YouTube and so on, there are lots of different kinds of new genres out there, and they're being created all the time. And so we're going to be trying to understand some of these genres and exploring them a little bit later. And then, as I said, we're going to see if we can make that link between understanding these generic characteristics, these generic features of videos, and trying to link that up with how we can get students to create video. We'll be looking at and we'll be actually analysing a couple of examples of student-generated video. And we'll finish by looking at what I call generic innovation. In other words, in order to really understand genre and why it's important, we need to know when something challenges that genre, when something is, let's say, subverts or is a little bit different, then that's when it often attracts our attention. And I think we'll see a very successful video later on made by students which challenges the normal conventions of the video that they're making. And I think you'll see that's why it is effective and actually also very funny. So let's look then at online video, what's new. I mentioned before that video, just a short introduction really here to try to maybe state the obvious, but you probably aware that divisions these days are blurring, so that the internet is full of possibilities for amateurs to create their own text, their own video, their own output. And there are endless ways that this can be shared online through different platforms. As I said, YouTube is perhaps the most famous one with regards video. And these divisions are blurring then between producers and consumers, between teachers and learners, and between the amateur and the professional. This is very important because it shows that students can contribute much more easily to the input of their class than they could in the past. And it's actually can be very, very, these days, very automatic. If your learners have got smartphones, I'm sure some of you have done activities with smartphones with images, for example, and you can simply get them in that moment in class to show each other their images, for example, or their videos on their smartphones, and that becomes suddenly input for the class. So this is why this accessibility and the practicality of digital technology is it cannot be overestimated. Why is genre important? I think I mentioned a little bit at the beginning that that understanding generic characteristics and understanding when these characteristics are challenged can be very helpful. But I think genre is important in general in the same way that genre is important when analyzing text. You know the expression to read between the lines of a text. I'm sure you're familiar with that. In the same way, we can look beyond the frame of a video or of a still image. Rather than taking that at face value, rather than taking the text or the video at face value, we can dig a little bit deeper, we can analyze a little bit more, and move beyond just comprehension. The visual image is extremely good for this because so much can be understood without oral comprehension. And as I said, once we do this, once we let's say read between the lines or look beyond the frame, once we look at video in a slightly more analytical way and try to unpack its features, its characteristics, this can help us an awful lot when students are creating. And we'll look at this a little bit later on. But understanding generic characteristics can definitely help students in the process of making video as well. So let's have a look at an example of a genre. I'm going to get you to do a task. Have a look at these 6 characteristics, 6 generic features. And when you've just read them quickly, and just in the chat box, can you put what you think the genre is? What is the video genre? Just for a couple of minutes. Okay, some people are. Yeah, so Alistair's repeated, what is the genre? Look at the generic characteristics and tell me what is the genre and how did you know? We've got some different answers here. Okay, we've got trailer, drama, Wild West. I'll give you a clue. Yes, I'd say trailer, Anna there, and also Olga and also Hira have got it right, and now Jocelyn. It's a trailer. I was going to say I'd give you a clue that the trailer normally is about 3 minutes long. All of these 6 generic features refer to this particular video type, which is the trailer. Could you think, or your knowledge of, I imagine you have seen lots of trailers in your life, is that right? These days, in the old days, we used to watch trailers in the cinema, but nowadays, of course, we can watch them again online. So could you perhaps, in the chat box, write down another generic characteristic, another characteristic of a trailer? Might take you a little time to do that. Just think about the trailers you have seen and think about what makes them, what is it that makes them trailers? What characteristics? So I'm getting some, yes, very fast action, short, cliffhanger, good. The music's very important, yes. Suspense. Yeah. It raises curiosity. I like that one. Prediction of the plot. So that's right. What trailers do is that they kind of squeeze, don't they? An hour and a half or 2 hours of film action. They squeeze it into like 3 minutes, and you have a kind of very 3 minute summary of the plot. But some of the things you're writing are, let's say, the consequences of the generic characteristic. See what I mean? So in a sense, the generic characteristic is that they are short, that they include dramatic moments, that they include suspenseful moments. And the consequence of this is that they create curiosity. They make you want to go and see it. So can you see then that understanding genre, we can also understand the purpose of the text type, or in this case, the video. Why are trailers like that? Well, the trailer is designed so that you go to the cinema and watch the movie. And that's why they have these generic characteristics. I've just got a few more for you here. Okay, just have a look. There are a few more. I mean, there are probably 20 or 30 different generic characteristics of a trailer. We don't need to go into all those details now. But I hope that by looking at, you may not have stopped to think about these generic characteristics. And I think one of the things that's interesting is that because as teachers we are so focused on comprehension, that perhaps if you have ever shown a trailer, and let's face it, trailers are very good to show in class because they're very short, they're very suspenseful, they're very exciting, they pack a lot of information, they're excellent resource, it's an excellent resource to use in the classroom. But quite often as teachers we don't focus on these features, these generic features. What we tend to focus on is understanding the material or the input. And I think, as I said, this approach of generic, focusing on the generic, moves us away a little bit from forcing us to understand. And very often trailers are very difficult to understand. Book trailers are also cool, somebody says. Absolutely, we're talking about trailers for films, but of course there are trailers for all kinds of things these days, including books and other media. So if you want to look at, just to give you an example, those are the characteristics of a typical trailer. Yeah, the fact that they have a lot of suspenseful action, that they include a summary of the plot, that they may include a voiceover. But exactly, in order to understand the way that a genre is subverted, we need to understand these generic characteristics and then see why is another example different. And if you want to see, just as a matter of interest, if you would like to see a trailer which is very, very different it's very good, but it's very different to let's say, the conventional trailer, I recommend you have a look. You can go into YouTube or any other online video sharing platform. Have a look at The Social Network, the film about Facebook. I don't know if you've seen it. You may have seen the movie. The trailer was extremely well known. It won lots of prizes, in fact. And one of the reasons it was so well known is that, as I said, it challenges a lot of these conventions. So have a look at that if you're interested in looking at genre in more detail. Genre, as I said, is more important than ever because there are new genres appearing all the time. Just in the chat box, how many online video genres can you think of? Online video genres. So I don't mean a thriller, or I don't mean cinematic genres or television genres. I mean online genres. Could you think of any? How-to, that's a good one. Jack has written how-to. How-to videos are extremely common, and we're going to be looking at those in a moment. Vlogs, exactly. Video blogs are the classic, especially very popular with teens. Video blog, by which we mean someone sitting in front of the webcam and just talking about their lives and what they've been doing. Yes, DIY, tutorials, recipes. These are exactly all different ways of saying how to, aren't they? There's some great ideas. Thank you. Bloopers, exactly. We'll be looking at that later on. React videos. So I think you know more than I do, actually. You're obviously all YouTube addicts out there. You're addicted to to the Cambridge webinar series and to YouTube, I see. Music, absolutely. Music videos, something which have, let's say, changed. I mean, videos are still watched on television and so on, but of course, music videos are seen very widely on YouTube as well. Pranks as well. Great. You've anticipated a lot of my next slide. Just to give you an example of a new kind of genre, going back to the trailer, I wonder if you know what a teaser is. Does anybody know what a teaser is? Maybe you could write that. What's the difference between a trailer and a teaser? Yes, so Katerina, a shorter trailer, exactly. So we think a trailer is about 2 to 3 minutes. A teaser is literally about 30 seconds. So it's, as Olya says, a short peek into a movie. And that's, again, a very interesting symptom of our digital age, isn't it? That these genres, these video genres, are very short, and they're getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And a teaser is a good example of that. Okay, let's have a look then at some of these. I've made a list here of other online genres, and this is the book that Alistair mentioned. If you're interested in digital video and exploiting digital video, this is the Cambridge University Press handbook that I co-authored with Paul Driver, and it features a lot of these online video genres, and it includes actually its own YouTube channel. Cambridge University Press ELT have their own YouTube channel, as you would imagine. And there on the channel, you can access some of the videos that are exploited in the book. And it's quite an interesting, the 10 videos there, because they actually sum up a lot of the different genres that we've been talking about, a lot of the new genres. So, for example, on that YouTube channel, you can see examples of animation, stealth advertising. This is a difficult one, but basically these days advertisers have to be a little bit more, have to be a bit cleverer and more imaginative these days, because people are a bit tired of seeing the same old kind of style of adverts. So these days it's very common for companies to make short films and to disguise them. So you don't really know that you're watching an advert until the very end. I don't know if you know any of those, but they've become, advertising these days is seen almost more online than it is on television. And so YouTube is a great resource for this. And I think it's a very interesting activity you can do with students. Show a film, show an advert, and then get them to guess what the product is. Stealth advertising is an example of that. Kinetic typography is, well, you'll see in a moment an example of kinetic typography. In a sense, this is not exactly a genre itself. In itself, it's actually a technique which any video can incorporate. And it's when you hear a voiceover and you see text and images appearing simultaneously in sync with the voiceover. Video poetry, there's an example of a poem which is visualized. And I think this is, I've spoken about this before, but I love these kinds of new genres. A lot of people talk about new on YouTube genres being very, very superficial. And I actually think a lot of these new genres can really help us and help students understand quite complex texts. So, for example, a piece of poetry can be quite difficult to analyze and understand and interpret. But if you show a visual representation of it, then this aids the comprehension greatly. And I think really helps students kind of understand what the meaning of a particular poetic verse. There's a charity campaign clip, an advertising campaign for a charity, and a tilt shift film. That's a very technical term. Basically, I don't know if you've ever seen any of these movies which look like they're kind of in miniature. It looks like you're watching everything made in kind of Toyland. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Perhaps you could in the chat box. It's a technique which makes the landscape or whatever the person is filming look very, very small, as if it was a miniature. And it's a technique you see quite a lot these days. these are just examples. Yeah, it looks like a model. Yes, Sherry, that's better. Rather than it looks like a model. So, for example, you're watching a train, and it looks like a model train set that you had when you were a kid. These are examples of the videos on the Cambridge University Press video channel, which corresponds with our book, Language Learning with Digital Video. Here are some more genres that I'm sure you and your students watch very often. Somebody mentioned bloopers before in the chat box. So yeah, bloopers meaning unexpected accidents or mistakes that happen in live broadcasts. People love these kinds of things, live television where things go wrong. Video memes and fads. So this whole idea of memes, by meme, what I mean is an idea or a style that spreads, yeah? It's like viral, that spreads from person to person within a culture. And so very famous memes are, I'm sure you'll remember, things like Angry Cats or Free Hugs campaign, often associated with songs, things like Gangnam Style, Harlem Shake from previous years. These are... I don't know what the latest one is. If you know what the latest one is, put it in the chat box. But I'm not very familiar with the latest video meme. But I'm sure there are lots at present which people are. The interesting thing about it, as I said at the beginning, this blurring the division between amateur and professional, the students and in fact everyone out there being able to create their own version of a particular video. This is what. This is all about, this idea of memes and fads, the idea of spreading and creating your own version. Also, as I said before, new advertising, infomercials, the idea of, as I said before, adverts. Someone mentioned the ice bucket challenge. Yes, that's a good example. That's a very good example. Yeah. The idea of adverts these days being having to be more clever and disguising the product to attract people's attention. Video art, mashups. I don't know if you've ever seen any mashups. This is where you get different clips of from maybe different movies or different music videos, all edited into one. Could be perhaps 1 second of. I remember a song by Lionel Richie, "Hello." The lyrics consisted of all of the words of the song that had been taken from different music videos. Can you imagine that? Or different Hollywood movies, things like that. Quite crazy stuff. Animated lectures and prank clips. Animated lectures, again, is another very good example of a new online genre. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these where, again, you get quite a difficult academic lecture, but because it's animated. The Arts Council is a good example, if you're interested in looking at these. The Arts Council of Britain have produced a lot of these animated lectures. Again, it's a very interesting way to get students in understanding quite complicated discourse. And prank clip, the opposite of that would be something silly like prank clips, silly games and so on, or tease people making fun of others. So what I'm saying here is there's in these different genres, there's a real mixture of the fun genres and the serious ones. And as I said, this is, I think, challenging the idea that a lot of these new genres are superficial. In fact, there are all kinds of things out there. And as I said, those videos from our book, Language Learning with Digital Video, will show you that there's, have a look at those, because I think you'll be surprised at the creativity and the innovation there. In terms of teens, some people mentioned these before. In terms of teenagers, these are very common video genres. What I mean is the kinds of videos that the students are watching and the kinds of videos that teenage students are making in response to watching these videos. So, for example, we mentioned the Vox Pop, maybe little interviews, getting a student talking and then interviewing his colleagues or her colleagues, the video blog, the React video, where the student is watching. You've probably seen, somebody mentioned it in the chat box, someone is looking at a video and commenting on it at the same time. So you've got a video within a video, response or React videos, haul videos. This is something where a teenager might come home with having just bought something from a shop, perhaps clothes or something like that, comes home and just shows everybody, look, I bought this. It cost me £20. It goes with my new T-shirt, etc. Challenges, video games, obviously a very common genre. Different teenagers challenging each other in different ways, playing video games. Science, what happens when you break an egg underwater or something crazy like that. All kinds of strange questions that teenagers ask each other. Unboxing, thank you. Somebody mentioned unboxing videos. This is one of my favorites. So this is where people go and buy an iPhone and then they video themselves unwrapping it or unboxing it. All of these, I've spoken about these in other talks and conferences. And what I find very interesting about these is, again, the potential. When students making their own versions, the potential, the pedagogical potential is enormous. Again, you think that some of these genres are kind of superficial and silly. In actual fact, just getting somebody talking about opening their iPhone, unboxing their new iPhone, requires a lot of language, talking to the camera and explaining that to the people out there does require the delivery and also the content of what you're saying is not necessarily easy. And the important thing related to genre is here that students have seen these genres before. Students have seen examples of these, and what they're doing is imitating them. And in order to imitate them, they have to understand the generic characteristics. In terms of videos, in terms of genres, the most popular genre still on YouTube are music videos, which may be a surprise to you. And I think in terms of exploiting music videos, I think we can go beyond the gap fill, go beyond the idea of just analyzing the lyrics of the song, but again, get students responding to the visual stimulus. So getting the students to visualize the video from the lyrics. So rather than getting them to fill in the lyrics, show them the lyrics and get them to visualize what they would put in the video, and then compare that with the real video or the authentic video. And of course, there are lots of non-authentic. There's this idea of the blurring, this idea of blurring the amateur and the professional. There are a lot of amateur videos out there, music videos. A lot of people who want to express their idea of a song visually, and get students to see different videos of different versions of different music videos, and tell you which one is authentic and which one is amateur, and how do they know. That requires students to understand genre a little bit. Lots of things you can do with music videos. You may have seen literal music videos. This idea of the lyrics not reflecting, the lyrics are not what's in the song, but the lyrics are in fact describing the visual actions. I don't know if you've seen any examples of literal music videos, but they can be very funny. Okay, just a final point before we go on and look at students' videos, examples of students' videos. Just a final point, the impact of digital tools here. I don't know if you know lyricstraining.com. Oh, well, Sullivan has just mentioned that, or Sarah has just mentioned. Anyway, it looks like people are talking about it before I mentioned it. But what is interesting about lyrics training is that students can do the gap fill themselves. In other words, the students go into lyrics training, they listen and watch a video of the music that they want. If they get the lyrics right, the music video carries on. If they get it wrong, then they have to watch that part of the video, the music video again. This means that, in a sense, this means that it seems silly really to do gap fills with music videos anymore in class, because students can do it at home very easily with this kind of technology, with this kind of digital tool. That's an example, I think, of the digital age, let's say, making it easier for us to do these kinds of black and white tasks. These kinds of discrimination tasks can be done at home by the students as self-study, and that gives us more freedom to do more creative work in the classroom. And finally, not forgetting, everyone talks about new genres, but in fact, the internet is full of nostalgia, isn't it? YouTube is full of nostalgia for yesteryear, for the past. When David Bowie died recently, yeah, some of the most seen videos that week were all his old music videos. And these are some examples. So again, students are not just interested in the new; they're also interested in the old. Okay, let's move on to the final part of the talk, which is looking at video creation. As I said, the importance of the link between these new genres, these generic characteristics, and getting students making videos. So what we're going to do is look first of all at brainstorming generic features. And if you want to know a little bit more about this, then you can register here. If you make a note of that link, at the bottom of that slide, you can see a web link, and there you can register for a video pack designed for teachers, designed for you to encourage your students to create videos. So it's for student creation, it's not for exploitation. It's called Students in the Director's Chair. Okay, again, the link has been put into the chat box, so you can just click on that, and you can register, and you will be sent a copy of this. And basically, it's a whole pack, a whole teacher's pack with different videos made by students and giving you tips and advice on how to do the same thing with your learners. So in terms of brainstorming generic features, here are the, in order to prepare for that pack, what we did is that we got, a team of us got different teams. There were some teams in the States and some teens in Spain. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of the videos created by some teenagers in Spain in a moment. And they were asked to, first of all, they were asked to make a video based on one of these genres: music genre, the vlog, the video blog. Remember the idea of person just talking to the webcam, talking about their lives, just talking heads, if you know what I mean. A guided tour. It could be a guided tour of their room or a guided tour of their town. A walkthrough of a video game explaining the instructions to something, often with games. And the how-to genre, which we've spoken to before, a kind of advice or instructions about doing something. I wonder if you can imagine the teenagers that we did a lot of things with these teenagers. We got them to think about the generic characteristics of these different types of videos. I wonder, though, before we look at that, I wonder if you can guess which one of those 5 was the most popular video genre with teenagers. And it was clearly the most popular. Let's just see if in the chat box, which of those 5 do you think proved the most popular with this group of teenagers? So people are saying the vlog. Well, yes, a lot of people are saying the vlog, also the walkthrough, and perhaps less so the music, because it's more difficult perhaps to make your own music video. Funnily enough, the most common one was the how-to. Well, I think if you want to look at the end of this talk, you'll be able to see Anna Witcher's webinar, which was also called Putting Students in a Director's Chair. It was a webinar that she recorded a couple of months ago for Cambridge. And in that webinar, she talks in much more detail about the students making these videos. And she talks about why the how-to was so popular. I think one of the reasons was this idea of wanting to give their own version, wanting to give their own instructions about doing a particular activity. It does seem to be, with teens, a very common desire. So in this video pack, one of the questions, very simple question, but these are the kinds of questions that you could ask students before they make the video. You could just say, okay, in which type of video does a person, show how something is done? Or in which video does a person make a video for a song, show themselves playing a video game? These questions are very easy for us, aren't they? But for younger teens, they would require some thought. And I'll just give you, obviously, the answers. So in which type of video does a person show how something is done would be how to. That's obviously music. Playing a video game would be walkthrough. Show you around their room. etc. would be guided tour, and talk about experiences, things they like and don't like would be vlog. But can you see how useful that very simple question is? Again, it's not referring necessarily to the language that they need to use, is it? It's actually referring to the generic characteristics, the generic features of these different videos. What makes a guided tour a guided tour is because the person is talking about their experience, is showing you around their room, their house, their school. Or what makes a vlog is because the person is talking about their experiences and things they like. In terms of length, that's one of the first things we did with the students. Then, in order for them to understand, they could choose which one of these genres they wanted to. But the thing we wanted to get them to do was to try to understand the basic generic feature of this genre. And then there are lots of other questions. As I said, please have a look at Anna's webinar for more details about this. Again, this will be, Alistair has already put it in the chat box, but it will also be shown at the end again. So if you miss it, but she goes into much more detail of technical detail of how these videos were made. Okay. But in terms of video length, how long do you think the video should be? What do you reckon? What's the average length of a video in YouTube? We've mentioned it already. Yeah, exactly, Deborah. So 2 to 3 minutes, absolute maximum, no longer than that. And there are good reasons for this. The idea that students don't get overwhelmed. I think it's very important that the video is short, because the students need to keep their ideas short and succinct and not feel overwhelmed by the whole idea of making a video. 2 to 3 minutes would be ideal. The popularity of the how-to format, and if you want to look at how-tos, there are some very interesting how-tos, not just ones that you'd about be surprised at the kinds of how-tos out there. And here are some funny examples that I just put how-to into YouTube, and I got all kinds of funny how-to. I told you about this nostalgia for yesteryear. Teenagers love, very old how-to videos, like how to use a remote control, which was the kind of videos that you would have seen in the 1960s, for example. Okay, and if you're interested in how-to videos, apart from YouTube, much more specific to these particular kinds of videos, there's a lot of different websites you can go to for video sharing platforms. Howcast and VideoJug are the most well-known ones. So if you want to see some examples, also eHow, there's all those there. Again, remember this is being recorded so that you can go back, and but Sarah is very kindly putting in those links so that you have them. All of these they're all different. You can check them out yourselves, but you'll see that they have they're full of different examples of how-to videos. Okay, and then with the video creation group, and with the groups of teenagers that we had when we were getting students to make these videos, again we referred to the technical, the kinds of things they had to include, and again Anna goes into more detail about this, but very, very briefly. If you're choosing the how-to video, then you need to think about, okay, what is it going to be about? Obviously, it could be food, so it could be a recipe. And then what are you going to include in the video? What technical aspects are you going to include? So is it going to be face to camera, like a vlog? Or is it going to be with a voiceover? Is it going to include music or captions or credits? What kinds of props do you need to include? And then what are you going to talk about in the video? Obviously, this is not rocket science, is it? I mean, if you're making a food recipe, then you're going to need to include the ingredients, but then you're also going to need to think about how you give the instructions and what other kind of miscellaneous information you're going to include, cultural information, information about personal taste, and so on. And then, of course, how are you going to structure it, the beginning, middle, and end? So what kind of phrase are you going to use at the beginning? What kind of phrases are you going to use at the end, and so on? Okay, so let's have a look now. We've got 5 or 10 minutes left, so we're just going to have a look at a couple of videos to show you when we're analyzing student video, and let's look at it in terms of genre. So let's have a look at a video now, and we're going to look at a video for a Spanish recipe. It's the Spanish teenagers talking and I want you to watch the video, which is about a minute or 2 minutes, and identify these technical elements. So what do they use? What's the technique that they use? And as you're watching it, what do you think? How do you think they could have improved? What other generic features could they have included? Okay, okay, take it away, Alistair. Thank you. I'm going to watch the video now of the Spanish omelette.
Hello, my name is Begoña.
Hello, my name is Gadea.
Hello, my name is Marta. And we are going to explain you how to make Spanish omelette.
Ingredients are 1 onion, 4 eggs, 4 potatoes, a pinch of salt, and some oil.
First, we have to peel the potatoes. When we peel all the potatoes, we start to slide them.
Looking at the time, and I think I want to show you another video, so I thought we maybe cut that. Going back to Alistair, thank you. Going back to the elements, then, just from those 40 seconds, the only technique, as Rolla says there, the only technique that they use is face to camera, the person speaking directly to the camera. And they could have included other elements. It's a very good video. I'm not saying it's a bad video at all. But they could have enhanced the video perhaps by including, somebody says, subtitles, captions, photos, credits, music, or some other feature to make the video slightly, maybe slightly more innovative. So let's have a look at another example, which I think you'll think is very different. This is an example, again, it's also how to, but this example is how to build a house of cards. As you're watching this video, as you're watching it, it's not, the point of this is not to say, oh, the boys do it much better than the girls. That's not the idea. The idea is simply bearing in mind these generic characteristics. What do these guys do differently? How do they challenge the generic characteristics to make their video funny or different? Okay, so as you're watching it, think about these generic characteristics and what they are doing differently. Thanks, Alistair.
Hi, we are Alex and Guillermo, and today we will be teaching you how to build a castle of cards, also known as House of Cards. This expression dates back at 1645, meaning a structure that will possibly collapse. Rule number 1 for building a castle of cards.
If you want to make a castle of cards, please use cards instead of CDs, for example.
Like,
really?
Yeah, like that's impossible. Like, don't.
No, let me try, please.
Don't even try it. Rule number 2.
Patience is key for the process of building a castle of cards.
Obviously. See.
Come
on.
No!
Oh my god.
Rule
number 3.
Never give up.
Come on. No! Okay. Oh my god. Oh, come on. Rule number 4.
If you have shaky hands, don't try it.
Okay, you'll do yours and I'll do mine.
Okay.
Come on. Never mind. Rule number 5.
Don't leave the windows open because of the wind.
Really?
I can see people. It's taking a little bit of time, the video, because I can see. But people putting ideas in the chat box. That's really good.
Hey Alex, how you doing?
Really?
Huh? As you can see, it was a piece of cake for us. But just because we are pros. If you aren't a pro like us, don't even try it.
I think they bought it.
Yeah, I think it looked pretty legit.
Imagine building a house of cards without using a tape.
Impossible.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much, Alistair, for that. Oops. Okay, that's their famous line. If you ain't a pro like us, don't even don't even. Okay, thank you very much, Alistair, for that. A lot of people have written down what makes that different from the typical how-to video. And of course, one of the elements is humor, but they actually challenge a lot of the ways of the generic characteristics of a how-to, and they turn it really into a kind of comedy sketch by instead of giving technical details about how to make a house of cards, they give advice like things like if you have sticky hands, don't do it, or don't leave the windows open because of the wind, and so on. And I think this is the students realizing that to do it very straight would be boring. And so what they do is that they innovate by using humor and by element of surprise. In terms of the actual technical features, all they're doing really, again, is the face to camera and the captions. But as many people have said, the transitions are very effective. They use the green screen or a kind of backdrop there, which is projecting an image onto the backdrop to create a different effect. But the generic innovation, in a sense, comes from this structure, this idea of the opening very clearly, explaining what they're going to do, explaining the different rules, closing the video again very explicitly, and then I don't know if you saw the epilogue, the idea that they had tricked, because my video seemed to disappear at that point, but the very end of the video, if you didn't see it, was that they had taped in order to do it properly, they had used sellotape to tape the cards together. So this is the trick or the epilogue, let's say the surprise. And those are to remind you, the below are the rules that they use. Use cards, not CDs. Patience is key. Never give up, etc., etc. So can you see that what I'm trying to get at here, what I've been trying to get at in this webinar, is that a knowledge of generic characteristics is important, but especially when you want to challenge those generic expectations. It's absolutely fine to do a straight video, a straight recipe. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the Spanish tortilla, with the tortilla de patatas, the Spanish omelette that they make. But this is doing it, let's say, in a way which is quite flat. And in this other video, we've seen that by challenging genre, by doing things a little differently, you get a very different kind of result. So again, I think the innovative characteristics there, the sunset backdrop, the humor, the script that they've written, the interaction between the presenters, and this idea of epilogue, the idea they're kind of changing the genre by including that little epilogue at the end. And other activities, again, this is more details you can find in that pack. We'll give you that. We're going to give you that link now as we're coming to the end of the webinar. The students in the director's chair, remember, that's the video pack for teachers, for you getting your students to create videos. One of the activities that they do before you watch activities, they do while you watch activities, and after you watch activities, they look at these examples of these videos, and then they create their own ones. And one of the nice activities that's included is that students can then watch a video like that and then create a hashtag for that clip. And then they can write responses. Imagine they're watching that video on YouTube, they could write a response to the clip in like a comment. And again, this gets students kind of engaged and involved with the material. So I think, as a conclusion, understanding genre and understanding particularly new online genres. Remember, this is what your kids, your teenage students are looking at out there, and I know some of you are also looking at there, out there and on in the digital world. Understanding those genres can really help us get our learners to create and to innovate, to actually challenge and to create their own versions of recognizable genres. So this is the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please, Alistair will, I can liaise with him and he's going to pass any over. We have 10 more minutes now for any questions you have. And remember, as I said, that's my my personal website and my email if you want to get in touch with me. And again, without forgetting, at the bottom there, you have that link to register for the video pack for teachers, for creating videos with your students. And
thank you. Sorry,
finally, Alistair, if you go to Cambridge Webinars, on Catch Up, you will be able to see Anna's, very much related to this talk, is Anna Witcher's webinar, where she talks in much more detail about creating videos with her students. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ben. That was extremely interesting. I particularly loved that House of Cards video. Excellent. Excellent there. Okay, so we've got our first questions come in from Rizwana Bari, who asks whether we should encourage learners to create online videos independently or to work in groups.
Oh, I think in groups or in small groups. In any case, in the first instance, I'm a great believer in collaborative learning and peer teaching and peer interaction in the classroom and also outside the classroom. I think it depends on the nature of the video that you're making, but particularly for these kinds of genres where, these how-to ones where they can work together in a group, or a group of maybe just 2 or 3, as we saw here, it's really nice for them to interact with each other. If it was a vlog, obviously that would be a genre where you'd encourage students to do it individually. But again, it does depend on the genre. But I like the idea, and you'll see from that pack that we've been talking about, students in the director's chair, you'll see that we very much encourage their students to work collaboratively to create video.
Okay, thanks. Question now, an interesting one from Naran Gonzalez, who says, how do we make sure that learners' enthusiasm doesn't go over the top?
Yeah, I think those kids there, they were quite enthusiastic. I think that's a good question. I think the time limit is very important. Yeah. So, and I think the structure. So getting them to write the script, to imagine the structure of the video does kind of curtail them a little bit. The time limits is, so you say other than time limits. I think the structure is very important. Look how tight the structure of that House of Cards video is. Yeah, the introduction, the body of it, with the rules, the way it builds up, and then the epilogue, all within about 2 minutes 20. So I think that's very important. Again, this is very much something you can do by analyzing genre. They can look at a 2-minute how-to video that's on one of those sites that they can analyze exactly how maybe professionals or other amateurs have done it, and then they can create their own versions. I think generic structure is the key.
Okay, thanks. Got a question from Jack Burleson, who asks if there's any particular free video editing software you recommend.
Well, I think Anna would probably be better answering this question, but I think that these kids were using just Windows Movie Maker and the iMovie or the Apple. I think either the Apple or the Windows. I don't think they were using it. Maybe for some of the transitions, they may have been using some other. Somebody mentions Movie Maker. I don't think they were using anything more sophisticated than Movie Maker and iMovie. And they can create all the captions and titles and stuff themselves. So, but again, have a look at Anna's webinar for a bit more detail in terms of the technical elements.
Okay, thanks. I would just say add to that that iMovie is very intuitive. It's easy enough that even I can use it. A question now from Sullivan Magales, who asks your opinion on sort of the resistance to technology we see from some students. The students who don't fit our assumption that all students are automatically tech savvy because they're digital natives.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I don't have children myself, but my nephews who are all teenagers, it's quite incredible how un-tech savvy they are. That's a very good point. That myth about all these teens being tech savvy is so true that it really that really is not the case. But however, I think you will find that in a group of students you'll have a bit of everything. And again, this goes back to the first question, I think, with the learners learning from themselves. So you may find, in fact, that if you're making three students are going to make a how-to video, you might have in those three people, three teens, you might have one who is very tech savvy, and then another who is a bit more savvy in terms of the language side, and then another one who is a bit more savvy in another aspect. And so that this way that they can all learn from each other, and not just referring to the language aspect, but to the technical aspect as well. So if you can detect that, if you as a teacher can detect that, you could actually deliberately pair up or group up students so that there is a more tech savvy person in each group or in each pair. And as Alistair says, I think, I'm not particularly tech savvy, although I write about and analyze online video. Particularly, I'm interested in all that. But in terms of creating video, I'm not at all an expert. And I would agree with him that a lot of these software packages, are very intuitive and do not require an incredible amount of technical know-how. It's just simply a question of kind of getting over that initial fear, or how am I going to be able to use this, and what's going to happen, and so on. And I think it's worth any teacher really sitting down for a few minutes with these tools and getting a handle on them, and making sure that you know a little bit how it works before forcing your students to do it. I think that's very important as well, that you also feel confident enough to show an example in class, and don't just rely on the tech-savvy students to do it.
Okay, thanks. Good question now from Svetlana Gavrilovich, who asks how you evaluate student videos.
Well, I think that's again very subjective. I think in the case of these videos, we can analyze them on the language side, the fluency side, the fact that the students are getting their message across. I think the point here is not to insist on extraordinary accuracy, technical accuracy. I think the point is that if the students are communicating well, are able to get their message across, then I would give them the credit for that. And I think the technical aspects can also be evaluated. And I think in the case of the House of Cards, I think apart from the fluency and the language prowess there, it's quite clear that the students have worked very hard to structure their 2-minute video very carefully. And I think that also needs to be evaluated. So I think a mixture of language and also, originality of idea and concept and execution. But again, I think I would insist not to focus overly on accuracy. I think make this fun, in the first place, in the first instance.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ben. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, everyone. So, sorry we have to cut it off there, but we'll be back next week, back to the usual time of 3 p.m. UK time. And that's when we'll have Anne Robinson joining us for a session on teaching young learners to paraphrase. Then on Thursday, at the later time of 8:30, Jean Lambert will be joining us for a webinar on plagiarism, why students do it and how you can help. And I'm very sorry for anyone who didn't receive the email announcing the change of time for this webinar. The recording of the webinar will be live on our blog, cambridge.org/ELT/blog, by Friday. So apologies for that. Okay, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you next week, I hope.
Thanks very much, everybody, for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sorry for those who, as I said, who have now connected and thinking that it was the time was different. I'm sure, as Alex said, that you'll be able to enjoy the recording at a later date. Thanks very much, and have a good afternoon, morning, evening, night, wherever you are. Goodbye.
Bye, Ben.